Today we're going to be making beef hot pot. Okay, let's get started. What we're going to need is some whole grain mustard. If you don't have whole grain mustard, plain English mustard will do. We're going to need a couple of onions, white onions. We're going to need a couple of beef stock cubes, about 800 grams or thereabouts of stewing steak, braising steak, and some pork lardons. These are smoked. You can use unsmoked if you preferred, but the smoked does just bring a little richness into the taste. Okay, let's start with chopping the onions. Now what we want to do is we want to cut the onions so that they're in nice long pieces when they're cooked down. So if we cut through to the centre, take a little edge off so it stands up square, and then slice through sections about 5mm wide. What that will then give us when it cooks down is nice long pieces of onion. So repeat that with both of them. Cut through to the centre. If you make a little flat spot on one side, it just makes it a lot easier to handle, and it's not going to slide around or try to roll off the board. Okay. So that's the onions prepped. So let's get our beef stock underway. A couple of beef stock cubes. And I'm going to stick in about a pint of water, half a litre. Give that a little stir. That can be underway and they can be dissolving while we start to brown the meat. So what we're going to do, go to the hob and we'll start browning up the meat. What we want to do is do it in small batches, and we really want to just sear the outsides, not cooking it all the way through. But if you don't do it in small batches, you're just going to overcrowd the pan. It's going to sort of boil away rather than actually cook. We're not adding any oil or anything to the pan. We're just effectively frying the beef on a pretty high heat. We'll let it sit on one side for a few minutes, then we'll turn it, let it sit on the other side for a few minutes, empty the pan and repeat until we've got all the beef underway. Okay, that's the beef now browned off, and I've now transferred that to an oven-proof container that I have a lid for. What I'm now going to do is just cook off the lardons for a few minutes. Again, we want them sort of just fried off a little bit, and we will add them into the pan. no need to use a separate pan, they can just go in top of where we've cooked the beef, and hopefully the oil from the lardons will lift off any flavour in the bottom of the pan, anything that's stuck where we've cooked the beef. As you can see, they've browned off nicely. And we can now add those into the oven-proof dish that we've put the beef in. Okay, now we can move on to making the stock. It's been sitting here, so hopefully these stock cubes have started to dissolve. Give them a good stir up, make sure they are completely dissolved in there. The beef ones always seem to take a while. Okay, what we're going to do to that stock, now that the cubes have started to dissolve, is we want to add a really generous heaped teaspoonful of whole grain mustard. Again, if you don't have whole grain mustard, just put in a level teaspoonful of English mustard. You'll get the flavour. The difference with this is obviously you do get the grains in the finished sauce. As you can see there, we're starting to get the mustard seeds in the stock. So what I'm going to do now is just add this to the dish. That's going in the oven. As you can see, got enough liquid to cover the meat. And what we want to do, just separate the onion pieces and lay them on top. As this goes in the oven, obviously the stock will warm up, it's going to start plopping away, and the onions will just steam down, cook slowly and settle down into the stock. So we want to get a lid on this. We want to stick it in the oven on about 160 degrees for around 2 hours. What we are doing is we're essentially slow cooking that beef. The stewing steak is quite a chewy cut. We're going to slow cook it, it's going to soften it right up, and then we'll be able to bring that out and add that to the final dish and thicken the stock. So just pop this in the oven and pop it out in 2 hours time. Okay, here we are some 2 hours later. It's been in the oven now for just about 2 hours on 160. As you can see, the meat has tenderised quite nicely, starting to break up in when pushed. What we need to do now is remove the meat and put it into an oven-proof dish for the next stage. Now we want to strain it from the stock because we're going to thicken that into a sauce. It's worth saying at this point, you could have done this in a slow cooker. It would have taken significantly longer to cook, but if you regularly use a slow cooker and know your timings and how they work typically for how long you would cook certain amounts of meat, then this would be another way to do it. Okay. we're going to do now, got about a third of a mug of cold water. We're going to use some corn flour to thicken it. And 2 heaped teaspoonfuls. And we're just going to stir that into the cold water until it's all dissolved. There we are. We're now going to pour that into the stock and give it a bit of a stir. Now as that corn flour is warming through and mixing in, starting to see this stock thicken. It will thicken further once it's in the oven for the second time with the potato on top. Okay. Now what we need to do is add the stock back over the meat. Okay, that can just sit there now while we prepare some potatoes. Okay, going to need some large potatoes now. I'm going to get these peeled. The good thing with this dish is because we're adding the potatoes to the top uncooked, we can start off with 4. If we don't have enough, we can peel another one. So I'm going to use the same technique as we used with the onions. Cut a flat spot onto the bottom, keeps it fairly steady, and then we want slices of potato about 2 millimeters thick. Doesn't matter if they're a little thicker, doesn't matter if they're not completely consistent. Okay, sliced up the potatoes. What we're going to do now is just lay one thin layer gently down over the sauce. Just slightly overlapping. You can leave some spaces in there, that's fine. So we've sort of got a barrier between the liquid and the potatoes. So what we can do now is start laying these on top and stacking them in some kind of pattern. You can go round the pan, you can go in straight lines, whatever works for you. I like using the larger potatoes and getting the really large slices. And put all the little bits in and use those as well. And they come back over the middle. And then I'll repeat to use up the potatoes that I have. We can tuck bits in the edge. There we have it. That's all of the potato. What I'm going to do now is just add a tiny drizzle of olive oil over the potatoes. I use a pastry brush. If you haven't got one, fingers are fine. Just give that a little brush over all the potatoes. Might want a little more there. This will help them brown up really nicely. Okay, so there we have that. What we're going to do, now pop it in the oven on 180 for about 45 minutes to an hour. Keep an eye on it. You should see the potatoes starting to cook through. They'll drop slightly and they'll start to brown. If you wanted to sort of time this for a set meal time, you could cook it slower at this point, so maybe drop it down to 160 and extend it out to an hour and a quarter, hour and a half. Okay, let's get it popped in the oven. Okay, that's had just coming up to an hour in the oven at 180 degrees. Potatoes are all nicely cooked and crisp. Shall we serve it up and see what it looks like? There we go, beef hot pot. The meat should be lovely and tender, which it is. As you can see, it just falls apart. Thanks for watching. Hope you've enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you have, perhaps you'd like to give it a thumbs up. Maybe consider subscribing to the channel and hit the notification bell so that you'll get notifications when I put up further videos. Thanks for watching.